Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor and pleasure to stand here before you to introduce our closing plenary speaker for this evening and for the 4th annual global convening on diversity and inclusion in the arts, SphinxCon. Mike Muse, a former industrial engineer, is the co-founder of Muse Recordings, a celebrated record label with a reputation of quality and innovation. In addition to running Muse Records, Mike can be heard as a guest commentator on the business of music, pop culture, and politics at the highest-rated urban radio stations in the country. He is a guest lecturer on various topics dealing with the business of music and politics, and has been VH1 pop culture political expert, a BET on-air word commentator, a BET year-end review commentator, and an NBC News industry expert. Mike was bestowed the honor of being the youngest person ever selected for the 100 Black Men of America Achievement Award, and a recipient of the proclamation from the State Senate of New York for his outstanding leadership in civics and business, among many other incredible accolades. He served as a member of President Barack Obama's Tri-State Area Finance Committee and was a fundraiser for his presidential inaugural committee. Mike has been featured twice on the cover of Crain's magazine, the preeminent destination for business news in New York, and was recently named My Brother's Keeper Millennial Entrepreneur Champion. We are thrilled to welcome him to the SphinxCon stage for the 2016 closing plenary. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mike Muse.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for that long pause. This is a long walk up here, so I thank for the continuous applause. You're like, would he get to the stage? Please, please, please get to the stage. Thank you so much, everyone, for having me. I am honored and I am thrilled to be here. I have to be honest with you, and it's kind of in a comforting kind of way. I have been a fan of Sphinx for years, right? And I had seen the work that Sphinx would do, and I was like, that's amazing that there is a black and brown orchestra. Like, how cool is that? The guy who created it is like a rock star. I'm like championing him from afar. And then to have the distinct honor to connect with the Dorkins in the fall and to meet them live and in direct and in person, I couldn't be more thankful, I couldn't be more happy, and I couldn't be honored and thrilled. And to say I'm nervous too at the same time, right? Like, and this isn't my first time at the rodeo, let's be clear, right? Like, I speak all the time and I never get nervous, right? But there's something about speaking in front of an artist community, right, that always makes me a little bit nervous, because you guys are always so true, so vulnerable in your art, and so authentic in your ways, whether it's a viola, whether it's a classical piano where you're dinging the keyboard, like you really get into it, and you always talk about living your truth, right? Like, I love when you interview an artist, no matter what artist it is. It could be hip hop, rock, pop, opera, whatever. They're always like, this is the real me. This is like my favorite album. Wait till you get to know the real me. So, I don't know. I hope you guys get to know the real me up here. This is my favorite speech ever. Right? Right? I want to give you the real honest thing that no audience has ever heard before. So I am excited about that. But I am excited for the authenticity to actually challenge you too as well, right? Like, I love being uncomfortable, right? I love sitting in uncomfortable spaces. I love sitting in uncomfortable positions, because when you are uncomfortable, that's where progress is made. That's where discourse is had, and that's where solutions get advanced, right? I'm not one of those like feel-good kind of speakers that makes you motivated and inspired, right? I like to ask, like, what are you doing wrong, right? And like, what could you do better, right? While at the same time being a supporter and a champion, right? And I feel like I could just talk all day about the challenges and diversity within the arts, right? And where we are in that space and where we are in that place, right? And so I'm not gonna bore you with things that you already know, but I'm here to help identify how can we be solution-oriented in my all of 20 minutes of conversation I have with you, right? A huge challenge. But This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, is this right here. Diversity in the arts, equity in the arts. How can arts be more obtainable? How can art be more accessible? How can we enjoy art for what it is? How can we get art to advance conversation? How can we get art to hold a mirror up to us to show who we are as a society and as a culture? And as I began any type of conversation that I have with this intersection of pop culture and politics, I always have to start with my muse. This lady, Billie Holiday, I swear to God, it's almost a cardinal sin if I don't reference her. At any point, I began to talk about art and policy and this intersection. She is it. She is everything with this strange fruit narrative. She had the audacity to stand up in the South, in these jazz clubs in the North, and to perform this song about lynchings, to have the gall to stand in front of a room of white people and to say, I am protesting these lynchings because they are a problem for me. They are a problem in this society. She did it in a very artistic way, but a very uncomfortable way she did it. Because see, people, she didn't have the New York Times. She didn't have a Huffington Post. She didn't have Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. Hit me up, I am like Muse. She didn't have any of that. What she had was art. She had soul, and she had courage. And that's all it takes to actually make change, is to step up and say, I am living in my truth. This is who I am. I'm not a protester. I don't door knock. I don't make phone calls. I don't fundraise. I sing. I let my art tell the story. I let my art be the change. That's a lesson for us all in the artistic communities, as we are artists, or we are the caretakers of the art, the donors, the investors, the supporters. We all have to know our role. And when you know your role, and when you know your place, that's when we collectively can come up with solutions. It shouldn't be the responsibility of Sphinx to solve it all. Whatever is your lane, whatever is your space, you own that lane and you own that space, and that's how you make the change. She stood in her lane, and look how much we're talking about it. I'm still talking about it in 2016, something that she did that was authentic to her. So if you're an artist, stick to your artistry and communicate the messaging through your art. If you're a donor within the art community, use your financial influence to influence those who want a check from you. And you say, you're not gonna get my check anymore unless this happens, right? If you are the ones who purchase it, you say, as a consumer, this is what I demand. As a consumer, you don't have to go out and make an album. That's ridiculous. Stop trying to do that. Stop trying to be all things. But as a consumer, you say, I want more. When you go to your symphony halls, when you go to your operas, when you go wherever you go, you talk to that director and you say, I have a problem with this form of art, or I have a problem that the seats all look homogenous. What are we gonna do about that? Because I'm a patron, I'm a donor, I'm a supporter. I come here every day, I support your check. Get real with them. That's that. That is staying in your lane. We need to know what our lane is. And when you know what your lane is, you know how powerful this influence, this intersection is, then you will join me as we go to our next slide. TMZ. I saw this on January 31st, so about a week or so ago, and it struck me. I said, I can literally write an op-ed on this alone. And I can't show you the entire text just because space and dynamics, and it was very populated with videos and the whole thing. So what happens is, there's a guy out there named Drake. He wrote this song. It's called Summer Switch 2016. And with that, he actually did a diss to Obama, because Obama decided that he wanted to select Kendrick Lamar over Drake in terms of who was his favorite rapper. And then Obama said on TV that I enjoy Kendrick more because his album is so good. I enjoy everything Kendrick had to say. And I just had a moment. I said, my God, look at how far pop culture and the arts have come. To the fact that we have a sitting US president having a discourse conversation on two young black artists. He's sitting in the White House in an interview discussing, juxtaposing, comparative analysis, two different styles of art forms. Not only that, one of the artists feels some kind of way that the most powerful man in the world doesn't pick me. I'm offended. So what does he do? He goes out and writes a diss. The whole song's not about diss, Obama, let me qualify, but a line. But then it goes further, it gets put on TMZ, the home of pop culture. You see, breaking news. Breaking news and pop culture, Drake, Obama, beef. That's the power of art. That the power of art can go to the White House, get on a diss track, and then become on the #1 pop cultural website in the world. That is the power of your art. That is the power of your influence. Recognize that. Own that. Own that to be true and what it is. Because my God, this man said, Biggie, I never thought hip hop would take it this far. He never thought hip hop would become this amazing music, this amazing space, this amazing movement that started off in the South Side and the Bronx of storytelling, story of plight, story of drama, story of unhappiness, story of oppression. He never thought that it would make it this far to the White House, to TMZ, to mainstream, to white America. He never thought it would go this far. There's a responsibility that comes with your art. There's a responsibility with that. And what's interesting, it's enough, is this, I could almost end it here, literally just with this slide, and just make you take a minute of silence and just look and just ask yourself, what does this image mean? What does this dark face mean? What does this black man mean? What does this black man mean with the crown? What does black mean in the silhouette? What does this black man mean on being murdered? Is he a murderer? We can go so deep with that, right? Just by looking at it alone, but I won't do that. That's for another lecture, for another time, for another day. But it talks about it, and it talks about this intersection of when hip hop and mainstream kind of come together and they kind of connect, but then it also talks about the disconnect that hip hop and mainstream has. Because a lot of times we want to rely on corporations for sponsorships. We want to rely on corporations to help us advance the narrative. But at the same time, that's why it's important to have diversity in our corporations that are sponsoring the music. Because I feel so unsettled every time that I go to a Super Bowl week, every time I go to a Grammy week. Guess what artists they're booking at the Super Bowls, at the parties? Hip hop, rap, nothing but black boys on stage performing. And who do you think they are performing to? Who do you think their audience is? The audience is nothing but white people. It enrages me. It enrages me to look that Biggie, I mean not Biggie, but rappers are the hottest things in town. And they're not booking rock and roll artists. They're not booking pop culture artists for their parties. They're booking hip hoppers to make their party cool. But yet those in the audience don't reflect who is on the stage, nor who that music and that artistry represents and reflect. There is a disconnect with that. When do we hold brands accountable? When do we hold those who are the patrons and the donors and the recipients of that to say, this is an issue? When do we hold them accountable to be at the table? When do we put those who need to be put there in charge to say, there is an issue here? And there's nothing like hip hop during the Grammy weeks and Super Bowl to bring that to a head, to see how much work we have to do, how much further we have to go, how much strange fruit that we still have to endure systematically that looks different, but it's still there. But it's no different than what classical music, it's no different what artists are experiencing. This is the whole notion of class. This whole notion of classism. There's something about class that's been in my spirit for literally the last year. And how class got introduced to me was, I was coming back from a trip to Beijing, to China, where I got flown out, first class all the way. And I was coming back, and when I got home back to New York, my boy said, how was your trip? So I told him it was amazing, it was wonderful, I learned so much, and I had a great time. I was on the Great Wall, I had lobster on the Great Wall, and they shut the Great Wall down for me, and it was just this thing. I was like, oh my God, how amazing. He said, okay, Mike, I'm happy for you, this sounds great. He said, the plane, how busy was it? How packed was it? I paused like that, and with a shame, I said, I don't know, because I never looked back. In that moment of never looking back, I then began to realize how real class is. how real classism is, how insular you can be within your class structure, never to realize that there's an issue that's not being addressed, a part of the greater whole, but you're so separate. Doesn't mean it's racism. This is a class thing. And there's nothing that identifies class more so than classical music. There's nothing more so that identifies class when I go to the Metropolitan Opera and I'm the youngest black is there. And it's troubling. And I say, what are we doing wrong as an artist community? What are we doing wrong as a community that we're not disrupting this system, right? And I compare art and classical to hip hop. Follow me here. Hip hop is a subset of a group of a class that talks about their story, talks about their pain. And since then, hip hop has now moved up the rankings to the trajectory of the masses. They found a way, they figured it out to make it cool, to make it acceptable, to make it palatable. It's no different, Sphinx, in terms of what we need to do with classical music, which is a subsect of a certain class. How do you now disrupt this narrative? How do you now disrupt this narrative and destruct classism in classical music to bring it up to the population, to the masses, so that it's palatable? How do we connect the dots? And that's where I want to leave you with, is that notion of how do we deconstruct classism from classical music to bring it upward into the masses so that everyone can enjoy it? How do you make it palatable? How do you brand it? How do you make it accessible? How do you make it okay the way that hip hop has made it okay to make it to the White House? So that's where I leave you. And I look forward to entertaining any questions you may have about this discussion. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Not here? Okay.
With a bit of time we have today, and after such an inspiring talk, stay in your lane, breaking the boundaries, setting new standards, I just wanted to, while it's all still fresh in our minds, I wanted to go ahead and entertain some questions and facilitate a moment with Mike and pick his brain. In many ways, one of the criticisms of SphinxCon has been that we're preaching to the choir. But I think the biggest asset we have is the choir. Mm-hmm. So would love to hear from the choir. We need to make the choir bigger and stronger to make a difference. Any questions? Any reactions? Amen. That's good. The choir is doing well.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
I'll start off.
Please. Yeah.
Thank you for being so honest. You know, it has been a progression, I'll say, since the conference has started, getting to a point where I think we get to the truth. It's an uncomfortable topic to talk about diversity when you're really just talking about race, period. And where, excuse me, I think even in the arts, we section off and have private conversations. You know, so we start talking about that word authentic. And being authentic, in order to grow, we have to tell the truth. You know, and, you know, scratch off the scab to the ugly head of what racism is, because that's what it boils down to, and how some of us are born with it and have good intentions, and just because we're in the arts, we think that it's this utopia where everything is beautiful. We have a long way to go. You know, I've noticed that since I've been here, even more than before I came here, that we have a long way to go. And I'm hoping, because I keep hearing, you know, it is our hope and our desire in the future. In what future? I mean, artists, we're supposed to make it happen now. Is the future for my grandchildren in 2016? You know, literally, I mean, in a state where, and I'm gonna say it, we have a whole town of people being poisoned who are of color in their water, and we're not outraged. We're the ones who are supposed to cause change. When black lives, do they really matter? When black men are dying every day, and we're not outraged. And who are the ones who make the change? You started with Billie Holiday. You know, and I think that's where our narrative, it has to continue. And it has to be a true conversation of maybe not fixing it, just hearing out each other's sides and how it feels. you know, because I'm an artist, I'm a man of color, I'm very privileged, but I feel the suffering of my people. I feel it, you know, and I'm not apologizing for it anymore, you know, and I want to be able to speak my authentic voice and not be deemed just an angry black man. And yes, I'm angry, as I should be. One of my elders told me, and I was like, well, I don't want to be. She said, you should be angry. It's okay, honey. She was 80, and thank God, because I thought I had to put on something, you know. What do I do with my voice and my privilege? So
Is that a question?
No,
Oh.
I just say thank you. You
okay.
answered it, Black.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Black.
Hello.
A question.
My hero.
Is yours a question or a comment?
So, a question, and preceded by just a comment of thank you for your comments in your presentation, which were powerful. If you were to look at, say, an orchestra or in my case now, a school of the performing arts, when you're talking about this type of transformation to transition, whatever terminology you want to use, classical arts, to be more relevant.
Yes.
To be in the White House, so that Obama would be talking about the difference between the Detroit Symphony's performance and the Philadelphia Orchestra's performance of something, or between a Sphinx Laureate's performance. When you think about the role of orchestras, you think about the role of School of Performing Arts, what suggestions do you have so that we can hit that evolution?
That's such a great point, and thank you for raising that. I think that you have to recognize that the internet and technology has changed every industry. People think that technology has only really affected the music business, but the technology has disrupted film, it's disrupted television, it's disrupted fashion, and it's disrupted philanthropy. So it's time to really gauge how has technology and how does it need to disrupt classical music. And it's disrupted it in the good. It's disrupted it in the fact that more people are now interested in engaging with all those different elements that I've said, but it's also made the industries react to adjust their business model to adapt to the changing times of what the people and the consumers are wanting and needing. So it's time for classical arts, the industry of classical arts, to adjust its business model. Because that's one business model that I haven't seen changed. In every outing I go to, the classical arts is the exact same formula, it's the exact same system, the exact same attire, the exact same cocktail hour, the exact same hors d'oeuvres. Nothing has changed with that. Again, to use hip hop as my justification for this, the reason why art, as in fine art and the visual arts, has made such reckoning in pop culture to the fact now when you go to Art Basel in Miami and people are posting on Instagram and they're hashtagging more so the parties than they are actually the galleries or the convention center of actually looking at the art. But that's actually not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing because now people are aware and they want to engage with the art in their own way. So now galleries are more full in Chelsea. Galleries are more full in LA. When I go to LA and go to art galleries, they're robust and they're cultural diverse, right? What started that craze? Graffiti. What was born out of graffiti? Hip hop. That's how graffiti got born, out of hip hop. Graffiti got born, and then who took graffiti and elements of it? Basquiat, right? Who made Basquiat relevant to the masses? Hip hop. Artists start rapping about Basquiat. Jay-Z raps about Basquiat. Kanye raps about Basquiat. Swiss Beats raps about Basquiat. They use his crown. You see how big he had? They use his crown in a lot of references. So that becomes a staple. So now more people are into art because of graffiti. So you have to ask yourself, who is going to be your Basquiat? Who's going to be your graffiti champions? Who's going to find a way to disrupt it, make it engaging, make it palatable? Graffiti and street art has made art palatable. Art, visual art, fine art is one of the most intimidating experiences to go through. Even with me, as cultured as I am, as aware as I am, as well-traveled as I am, when I still enter a gallery of notes, and they look at me in my shoes, my blue jeans, and my white shirt with questioning, because art is not equitable. art is the most classist space to be in. Even if you have the money, you're still not the right buyer, right? So it still is this notion of intimidation, right? But now it's become such mainstream now. To the point Swiss Beats is doing something where he's doing commission-free parties, right? Where the artists set their own price points so they can control the market value. This is how classical artists and the industry of classical arts needs to start thinking about this. How can I deconstruct the classification of it to make it palatable for the masses? How can I make it attainable that is not intimidating when I go to the Met? Maybe do pop-ups. Be revolutionary. Disrupt your business. Don't think of it as the same. When you think of it as the same, you're going to get the same results.
In many ways, the most powerful group sits at that end of the room. Folks ages 13 to 26, the young participants of the Sphinx competition. You talk about disruption, reimagining, redefining. They play string instruments and they have big dreams and aspirations, and many times everything is there but not the tools. What's your one piece of advice to that group that's going to disrupt, that's going to become our Basquiat?
Yes, first, hello. Right? I love seeing youth involved in instruments. I just play the saxophone. I know that's a little
we'll make you play
not
afterwards.
as refined as a violin. But I would say with that is you guys can be the disruption. You guys can be the graffiti artists. Take what you've been trained in terms of the business model, throw it away. Never take away your training and your classical aspect of that. Keep that, right? But you guys, as you see classical music to be, change it. Just one instance I would give to you. I feel like there's a moment where classical artists start trying to replicate pop cultural artists. And you would see individuals in classical music and classical strings playing Beyonce songs or playing hip hop songs. Even someone who loves pop culture and loves classical music, couldn't find the authenticity in that, right? So whatever is your authentic truth, whatever you love, whatever you enjoy, just let that be natural for you and put yourselves in your own shoe. What would I want to see when I go to a concert? And then where would I want to have the concert at? It doesn't have to be at a symphony hall. It doesn't. It could be at a really cool space. Whatever you think is cool. You know, you don't always have to be buttoned up with pearls. Wear what you like. Make it easy. So just think of living my truth, appealing to the things that I love and I see on Instagram and Snapchat, right? And then do it from that capacity and space.
Thank you. Please.
Sure. One of the things that we discussed when it comes to sort of preaching to the choir was the fact that we're all obviously here because we enjoy classical music and we want to share it with people. But I wondered also if there is an aspect of maybe a group of people who aren't as anxious to bring this art form to the masses because it is something that's elite, it is something that's coded with class, and there's not really an interest in making it pedestrian, if you will. And I wondered if there is, I don't know, what is the best means for sort of approaching that type of issue, because it's not maybe as open-hearted towards the art itself. It's maybe just a little self-protective. So I'd love it if you would speak to that sort of impulse and anxiety.
Well, I think it starts with you, right? In the sense of, I think it starts with you actually saying that, right? I think it starts with you saying that classical music, anytime you have a microphone, right? To say classical music is for the elite. Classical music is for the wealthy, right? Say it and own it. Just as how comfortable I am with saying the word black. It's comfortable as I am with saying the word brown, right? It's a very uncomfortable, jarring word to hear if you're in the pejorative, right? When I say I am a black man, I'm talking about black issues, black things, black this, black that, we have to start saying that, because we never start saying that, we never address the problem. And then what happens is we get into this whole code speak of social economical. I love that. Social economical. That's a comforting way for this room to discuss race. Say white. Say poor white, rich white. Say poor black, rich white. Just say it. So we as classical, we as if I'm in classical arts, so the classical arts have got to start saying what is a state of classical art, identify what the root issue is, and you just identified it. It's uncomfortable.
Oh, you lost your mic.
Oh, sorry. They must be flapping too much.
It's so exciting.
I know. you identify what the root issue is, and the root issue is that they don't want to open it up because they want it to still be within this closed environment. Call them out on it. They're never going to be called out on it, and they're always going to be comfortable having it closed off until you make them uncomfortable, right? So it takes those who care, and there may not be a lot of people who care about it. But again, just as I talk about Black issues and Black America, it's so vast. We can talk about the incarcerations. We can talk about the prisons. We can talk about the drug use. Sidebar, I love how heroin is an issue now in Vermont and Maine, in that area, right? So now we have a war on drugs, right? So then we can talk about jobs, economics. There's so many things that we can discuss. I can't talk and save it all. I can only focus on what I do, and that's lifestyle, through entrepreneurship, through small business. That's my lane. I'm sticking to that. That's how I advocate. Whatever your lane is, stick to it, advocate for it within a classical space, right? So I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, good, thanks.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a question. I think one of the big differences between classical music and pop music is the length of the pieces.
Yes.
And in today's world, concentration is very, very, varied. I mean, even when I read an article, honestly, after one page, I'm already really tired of it. So I would say, how do you make classical music accessible without breaking it in a way, and also not only to, how do you prepare people for the art?
I love you guys. You guys know the answers, honestly. You guys have, and just in a few questions I've got, and I'm sure you don't speak for all the room. I'm sure there's some people in the room who dissent. And, get up to the microphone and dissent so we can have the discourse, right? But you two specifically, and you two as well, have identified the issue. You've identified that one of the reasons why it hasn't gotten to the mass population is because a classical piece can last 15 minutes for one song, right? I'm sure even longer.
Much longer.
So you recognize that that's the issue. So you know what it does? It takes you to change it. Who says it has to be 20 minutes? Who cares if those rich people think that it should be an hour long? You change it. Look at the way, again, technology has changed. It's to the point now where Instagram, the videos are 15 seconds. My brother's here who was recording. When we do videos on the internet, we always say, this cannot go over 4 minutes. If it goes over 4 minutes, we're gonna lose the attention of the audience. Instagram and now Snapchat is only, 9 seconds now. So now as Americans, or just as a society, we have a very short attention span by default. We don't even watch commercials. We fast forward through commercials. When's the last time you've sat in a 3-hour movie? That used to be very common 5 years ago. I went to go look at The Revenant, and I saw it was 2 hours and 20 minutes or 40 minutes. I said, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that anymore, right?
But I'm sorry, but do you think it's possible to not change the art?
Why not? It's up to you.
Yes, I know, but as an other possibility to change people's attention.
You're thinking too far about it. You can't save it all. If you have said to myself, I think that the reason why, or anybody in here, I think the reason why we're not really appealing to the masses is because our songs are 20 minutes each. What if I create a song that is 4 minutes each? How would that go over? If that's what you want to do, that's in your heart, who's to stop you? You don't need permission. Who is the owner of classical arts? Who deems it valid? Is there a World Arts Council that deems this to be perfect? I don't think it exists. If it does, I mean, please enlighten me. But as far as my ignorant self knows, it doesn't exist. So why can't you create that 4-minute song? Why don't you be revolutionary? Why don't you step up and be the Billie Holiday of your industry? That's what we need more of. If you identify the problem, stand up. Don't wait for her to do it. Don't wait for him to do it. You own it. I point them out because I know them. I don't know the rest of you. So or else I will start pointing to you.
It all falls on us.
I don't know. Hey, you. Look at this confidence. I love it. It's okay.
Do you know what the difference of pop and rap is?
Ooh, look at you with a good question. Juxtaposition, comparative analysis. I love it. Honestly, that's actually a really great question. If you would have asked me that 5 years ago, I would have gave you a completely different answer. You asked me that today, I would say nothing, right? Pop culture, by its definition, is popular music, music that the masses are enjoying, right? Now, rap music, you know, there's a thing out there called the Billboards, and they have like this top 10 thing. They list like the top 10 artists, you know, for the week. And if you look at that, you see nothing but rappers in the top 10. Give me another example. Taylor Swift. Do you like Taylor Swift by any chance or know who that is, right? Taylor Swift, you know who's on one of her lead singles right now? It's a rapper, Kendrick Lamar. So Taylor Swift is like the biggest pop star ever, right? And she still got a rapper to be on there. Are you a Bieber? Kind of, sort of. Ah, my man. Ooh, he's a classical artist for sure. Shots fired. Well, for the Biebers over here, maybe, he actually has a song, like an album with like 2 or 3 rappers on there, right? So today, I would say there is no difference anymore. 5 years ago, I would have said otherwise, but now, no difference. Great question. That was a tough one. Thank you, sir. What's your name? Amani, do you play an instrument? What do you play? Violin and piano. Absolutely. So smart. I love it. So classical. Thank you, Amani.
Another young one.
There's one over there. Okay. Yes. Hey, Nirvana.
Oh, hi.
Smells like Teen Spirit. You're so young for that. Go ahead.
My question is, how would you influence your peers of color to like not listen? Well, I can't stop what my peers listen to, but they listen to raps where it's about drugs and trap houses and calling women derogatory names.
Yes, that B word.
If they show skin, it's what's like a garden tool.
Yes.
So I was just.
Are you in agriculture right now? Are you a farmer, young lady? How did you know to use that metaphor?
I was just wondering how, like, I try to tell my friends, like, you know what that means, right? And they're like, oh, stop acting white. Like, how would I be able to tell them without them automatically assuming I'm acting white, but just, like, telling them what they're listening to? Wow.
I love it.
She's not a plant.
I could tell. Not a plant at all. That was a very authentic question. I salute you for that. What's fascinating is you and I can have this conversation for 15 minutes just for all the dichotomies of it all. And I'm going to answer your question directly. But then the political in me would like to also rephrase your question so I can answer the question that I want to actually answer to as well. Awful.
Authenticity.
But authenticity, I'm going to answer your question directly first, right? And I don't believe that you should. And that's probably not the answer you wanted to hear. And it's probably not the answer that the audience wanted me to say. As I told the young lady who asked me the question earlier about going from a 30-hour-minute song to a 4-minute song, and I made the suggestion of what world international organization verifies what is classical art. Who are we as a society, in my opinion, to question what is some person's art form? If that's what they want to talk about, if that's what they want to rap about, if that's what they want to sing about, if that's what they want to dress like, then allow them to be that. Who are we to all of a sudden, as artists, question another person's art? Art's in the eye of the beholder. It's a tough conversation. It's a tough answer, but it is. I'm looking at your shirt, Nirvana. They were very controversial at one point. You know, we joke Teen Spirit now, but he had a song called Rape Me, right? And you're wearing the shirt. So all I'm saying is there always is this dichotomy, right? So we can deem what we want to be value. It's all about what value do you place. So that's just my truth. I don't believe that. Because at that point, we'll always be redefining what is art and what should be art, right? I would like to, now to answer your tough question, I gave you a tough, uncomfortable answer. Thank you for your bravery for that. I would like to ask another question because I would love to talk about maybe how can we get more young people of color into the classical arts as well. And I read a study recently, and it talked about wealthy people's eating habits. And it talked about, more particular, wealthy kids' eating habits. And there is this common, denominator that, because they're rich, they just eat good. but they actually compared it to economics, right? And they said that no child, 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, authentically loves the taste of broccoli. They don't. Broccoli has a bitterness to it. So it's not palatable for that young age. But what happens is, let's use it in terms of a carrot, because it's easier to visualize a carrot, right? A carrot, let's say it costs 50 cents, right? A wealthy parent can buy carrots every day. And if the child doesn't eat the carrot, they can just throw it away with no consequence. If someone who is struggling economically, if their son or daughter only eats half the carrot, that's 25 cents being thrown out the door. So what happens is they stop feeding their kids the carrot because that's an economic waste. Whereas the wealthy doesn't dispose of it. They dispose of it, but for them, it's not an economic issue. It's more on principles of waste management, if you will, right? So you can keep buying it. Then the study suggested that it takes 15 times for a kid, poor or rich, to enjoy a vegetable. So if the wealthy kids have tried this vegetable 15 times, they just begin to like it by forcing it to them. Whereas a poor kid doesn't get that opportunity to be fed 15 times of that carrot. It's no different than the rap that you talked about. My Brother Is Here, we had this song we listened to in LA in the fall called Blase Blase by this rapper. Have you heard of it? I couldn't stand the song, right, Carl? I hated this song. I'm like, you know what, this is it. Hip hop's gone too far, I'm out. Yeah, I had that come to Jesus moment. But now it's my favorite song of all time. Why? Because I heard it more than 15 times. It's no different, right? So we, as individuals in the classical arts, have to get around that notion that we have to keep introducing classical music, keep forcing it. Just as the radio stations, keep forcing it. Just as Spotify, keep suggesting music to us. Keep forcing it, forcing it, forcing it, forcing it, forcing it, 15 times. And when you get down to 15 times, we just might start enjoying it more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have time for maybe one more question. Go ahead. Go ahead, Derek.
First, I wanted to thank you for the presentation. I was really loving the references to Big and Basquiat, and I am following you on Instagram now. So,
what up? What up?
What up?
What's your name on Instagram?
Derek Reeves.
That's on Instagram?
Derek_Reeves.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah. First, I wanted to say that there is already a level of sort of cross-pollination that's going on. You know, you speak of Kendrick Lamar, one of the musicians that played on Kendrick's album, a saxophonist by the name of Kamasi Washington. You may
yes,
know,
with that conjugation, it's a saxophonist.
Saxophonist.
Ooh, you smart.
Or saxophonist. I don't know. Which I'm not sure which one is correct.
Saxophone player.
But he released an album in 2015 called The Epic. It was a 3-record set. And he used not only like a 7 or 8 piece jazz band, but there was also a string section, a choir, you know, all kinds of percussion. And so you see, it was a jazz record, but he's very much influenced by hip hop. You know, he was listening to hip hop before he started playing jazz. He actually used to be in Snoop's band, and he toured with Kendrick, and he was instrumental in the instrumentals, no pun intended, on Kendrick's album. And then, on the other hand, you may be aware of a group, Black Violin, that plays violins but plays hip-hop music with violins. So a lot of this is already happening now. And, you know, there's even a member of the Sphinx Symphony Orchestra, a violinist, Clayton, that's actually a very happening music producer. And he's like, you know, so it's already happening. But I guess my question is, how do you reconcile, or how does one reconcile the hip-hop culture, which is both glorified in the media and at the same time demonized? You know, you have this perception that it's at the same time cutting edge, but then, then you see reckless murders and you know, all sorts of police brutality, and how do we take what is sort of urgent and vital about this culture without just making it another sort of Elvis, which is like sort of it's like raping the culture, sorry, for lack of a better word, and bastardizing it. How do we keep what is vital and urgent about it without cheapening it? Because there is so much of value there, there is so much relevance there, but it's something that shouldn't be done in an effort only to boost one's own street cred. It should be done from a place of sincerity and respect. So how does one approach that?
It's a really great question. It's very layered. So I feel like there's like 3 questions there, but I feel like you kind of asked me one directly at the end. Is the direct question, how do you not cheapen the issues of Black Americans in society by glorifying and commercializing hip-hop? Mm-hmm. Or is it, how can you get more classical arts, like the instance you referenced about Kendrick Lamar and the saxophonist, however that word was? Is that a question too? So I want to be clear, I answer your question directly. I love to be direct. So.
I think the main question is how do we sort of adopt elements of popular culture without cheapening the culture?
Got it. From a classical perspective, or just from a...
Or from whatever the point of origin is.
Okay. So I'm going to take it. If I miss any point of it, feel free to do a follow-up, right? It's no different than what I just said to the young lady who was standing here, right? You don't. There are other artists within the hip-hop industry who aren't demonizing women, who aren't being misogynistic, who aren't always talking about murders or any other of these things that you're addressing. So there are a ton of artists out there of other, right? Mm-hmm. What the media chooses to select is only by what we choose to populate. Mm-hmm. So by you viewing these on YouTube, you're increasing the views. Right. You were following each other now, I guess, on social media, so those are what begins to trend. So it's, again, we have to stop passing the buck, right? And just say, when do we stop clicking? Because even if you click out of curiosity, you're clicking, right? So when do you take the ownership of it? It's no different than I talked about on the stage here. When you walk into the Metropolitan Museum, and the Met, the Opera House, and you see that the audience is very homogenous, you as a patron, it's your responsibility then to do something about it, right? So it's no different than you actually having that choice to do it. I will actually say different. I am actually thankful that hip-hop discusses those tough elements or maybe inappropriate elements to you that you discuss. I am happy that they make people uncomfortable. But now I'm hoping that in your uncomfortability, that we begin to talk about it in forums like this, right? Because there's no better example than, I think the bell rang. So I'll wrap it up. There's no better example than NWA, Straight Outta Compton. Right. People were saying that about them in the 80s, in the 90s, about police brutality, and it was offensive. Nancy Reagan wanted to censor it. Radio stations didn't want to play it. They demonized them, right? But what happened was, as a result of that, the LAPD made change, right? Oh, and ironically, it's actually happening now. Right. Oh, it's no different. Oh, and they're still not getting justice for it. Oh, but then they made a huge movie about it. Oh, and then they advanced the conversation. Oh, but only the white screenwriter got the nomination for the Oscar. So where do you want to go with this? Right. So I know I say things that you may not want the answer to, but that's my truth.
But it's provocative and it's impactful, and we thank you for being a breath of fresh air and for sharing with us.
I'm
it
glad.
Was great.
I did it with a smile, though, right?
There you go. Innocent.
You like my smile? Is it a good smile, at least?
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us. So, folks, as we come to the end of SphinxCon number 4, Ignite to Action, first and foremost, I want to thank our brilliant conference facilitator, Jamie Bennett, who enabled and encouraged such engaging ideas. I think we can all agree that his thoughtful navigation of such topics has been just astounding, and we really, really thank him for being here with us. Let me also remind you about tomorrow's Sphinx Competition Finals concert, everybody, where 4 of the nation's top Black and Latino musicians will compete for a top prize of $50,000. The performance is happening at 2 p.m. at the Orchestra Hall, the home of Detroit Symphony. We do have just a few complimentary tickets that we'd love to share with you, so if you don't have a ticket, see one of us, any of us staffers, and we'll be able to help you. In addition to featuring the laureates, we'll also feature our guest artist, Brazil Guitar Duo, and the Sphinx Symphony Orchestra is going to perform under the direction of Maestro Andy Grams, who's somewhere in the house, and I think you won't be regretful if you join us. I'll also say that you'll have the opportunity to text vote your own audience choice winner. So it's great fun. Come join us. If you don't have a ticket, get one. As each of you guys return home, I do encourage you to reflect on what you've seen and heard over the course of a few days here and establish what actions you will individually and collectively take in your own home communities. And I also want to issue a challenge. For everyone here in the room and everyone who's listening, streamed in worldwide, I'm challenging you to, within 1 week from when you depart SphinxCon, email me one single word or one single thing, one single sentence. I'm very happy to get 400 emails. Completely fine with that. We will vet it. Send me one word, one sentence, one thing you will do differently as a result of this conference, this conversation, this convening. I think there's nothing more important than that follow-through. We spent a lot of time, many hours, talking about action and a difference, and we framed the conversation as really orienting it towards some type of change. And as I said earlier, sitting here with Mike, the grandest asset we have here is this choir. We have to make it bigger and stronger. So do email me. Let me know what you do differently as a result of this. And if you can't think of what you can do differently, let us know what we can do differently to empower that next year. We're happy to have welcomed you here to SphinxCon. I want to tell you the dates for SphinxCon 2017, which will also mark our 20th anniversary. That's February 10th through 12th. Be here in Detroit. Be back. It'll be exciting. And then in final closing, we thought that it would be important to close the conference with a bang, literally, a musical bang. And that's Ann Arbor's own Balkan Brass Band. They bring traditional Eastern European folk melodies to life with modern sensibilities and their own cultural fusion. Though the conference is over, the fun doesn't have to be. We hope you can join us out in the lobby for a wine and cheese reception and for a celebration of SphinxCon with Ritam music.